From Lake Point Community Church, this is Pastor Larry with a Connect Point message entitled Getting Ready for Easter. When Jesus was crucified, there were many Jews in Jerusalem that week that were celebrating the Passover festival. Now, that festival was also called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Part of the ritual of that festival was to remove every trace of leaven from the household of every Jewish family. Now, that was pretty easy to start off with the known batches of leaven that they used to cook with on a regular basis. But they also tried to get rid of the hidden leaven that was maybe crumbs stuck in a corner somewhere that was difficult to locate. But they would work hard at trying to get rid of that. Now, the significance of that for us today is that the Bible equates leaven with sin. And sin in our life can be categorized in those two categories just as well. There's obvious sin in our life that we are aware of, but there can also be hidden sin. And I'd like to give you a biblical example of how deadly hidden sin can be. Shortly before Jesus was crucified, he raised Lazarus from the dead. And that resulted in two specific reactions from the people. The first reaction, there was many Jews that believed in Jesus because of actually seeing the power that he had to raise Lazarus from the dead. But the second reaction was from the religious leaders, and they actually called an emergency meeting of the Sanhedrin. And at that meeting, some of the minutes from that meeting were recorded. In John chapter 11, we have this statement: "If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him." Well, I believe that sentence shows us two areas of hidden sin in the lives of most of the people that were on the Sanhedrin that day. The first area is exposed by the phrase, "if we allow him to go on like this." Well, was it their responsibility to control what Jesus did? I don't think so. And yet it was that attempt to try and control him that was wrong. They were trying to control something that was not, it was not their responsibility. The second area of hidden sin has to do with the last half of that verse, where it talks about the fact that they were upset that people believed in Jesus. Now, sure, it makes sense that they didn't want people to believe in Jesus, but what was the sinful part of that? The sinful part was when they were of the assumption that if people disagreed with them, then they were wrong. And those two sinful thoughts as the foundation for their thinking, when they were followed to their logical conclusion, they came up with the best solution to the problem was that Jesus needed to die. Now, that was a very deadly consequence, but it was based on their faulty reasoning. The foundation for their thinking was wrong, and they weren't even aware of it. It was hidden from them. Well, what about us? How can we prepare for Easter? How can we, if we want to get sin out of our lives, what do we need to do? Well, I think the first thing is we can work on the obvious sin, and that's sometimes actually easier than trying to work on the hidden sin, because it's obvious. We know it. And as difficult as it is sometimes to work on some of those areas of our lives, at least we're aware of it. But what about those hidden sins? Just as the Hebrews that were trying to sweep all of the leaven out of the household, they had to go searching for it. I'd like to encourage you to go on a search. Go on a search for hidden sin in the area of relationships in your life. And I'd like for you to ask yourself this question: am I doing anything that was just as wrong or just as bad as the members of the Sanhedrin that day? First, are you trying to control people in your life? At first you might think, well, yeah, I've got some responsibility to control some people, but I'm not sure that you do. If you're married, you certainly don't have any responsibility to control your spouse. If you're a child, teenager, you don't have any responsibility to control your parents as hard as you might try. But even if you're a parent, do you have a responsibility to control your children? I don't know that you have that responsibility as much as you have the responsibility to train them. I know as Peg and I were trying to raise our children, we endeavor to train them to control themselves. You really can't control somebody else. You may, as a boss, have responsibility to supervise an employee, but not necessarily to control them. So if those of you that think that controlling people is part of your responsibility, you need to take a hard look at that and see if indeed that is what God wants you to do in those relationships. And then the second area of possible hidden sin is, do you have this thought? That when somebody disagrees with you, you automatically assume that they are wrong. Well, I know that's something that I do quite a lot. I'll just be honest, some of the discussions that Peg and I have had over the years have been because of me having that type of thinking. That when she disagreed with me, I just immediately went to the assumption that that meant that she was wrong. And that's a sort of a knee-jerk reaction that I've been fighting against for as long as we've been married. And I'm still pushing against that because if I'm not careful, that's what I will do. And that's not correct. That's not right. Nobody is setting me up as the standard in my household. I mean, I may have tried to, but that's not right to do that. And your relationships are going to suffer if you're doing either of those, trying to control or looking at people as wrong if they simply disagree with you. So I challenge you this Easter season, would you be willing to ask God to show you if there's hidden sin in your life? Would you be willing to ask Him to show you if you are indeed trying to control people? I'd encourage you to do that. And if so, don't be too surprised if God uses somebody in your life that right now you might think is wrong when they disagree with you. Don't be surprised if God uses that person in particular to show you that hidden sin. I pray that God will bless you as you prepare for Easter this year.